We can start, sir.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Friday afternoon, where we are going to be joined by a fantastic panel to listen to the next topic for today, which is food and beverages industry. My name is Amit Karna. I am a faculty member at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and the faculty co-chair of the Creative and Cultural Businesses program, which is a 6-month program with an intensive 15-day campus module for entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs in the creative and cultural business sector. I am joined here today with my colleagues Anaka Narayan and Anchal Jain. Anchal, who is also my faculty co-chair at the program, will be moderating today's session. Let me, before I hand over to Anchal, let me introduce the panelists that we have for today's deliberation. And we are very happy to have with us experts from various streams of the food and beverages industry. Let me begin with first introducing to you Rushina Muncho Gildiar, who many of you would be knowing as a culinary chronicler. But I don't know if you know, but she also was one of the first food bloggers of India and continues to be one of the finest so far. She has her own company, A Perfect Bite Consulting, which, of course, she loves everything food, but she's also well known for her events and the reports that she produces, namely the annual Godrej Food Trends report, which has been regular for the last few years. She has been on projects such as Indian Food Observance Days, and so on. So Rushina, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We are really looking forward to talk a lot more food today, which is what I'm sure you love. Next, I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have is Matt Chitranjan. Again, many of you would know him as the co-founder and leading the Blue Tokai coffee roasters, which is one of its kind in the country. He started off this venture in 2013 with his wife Namrata, before which he has a very varied background, done finance with in Stern at NYU, studied in economics at the University of British Columbia, has spent time on US aid projects and worked with NGOs. Very happy to have you, Matt, on this show. We've always been referring to the Blue Tokai business model to many of our aspiring entrepreneurs. Looking forward to hear from you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks. Next, we have Giri on the panel here, Giridhar Sanjeevi, one of our alums, IMA alums from the batch of 1987, and of course also a chartered accountant. Giri has been working in all the good industries, as he would like to say, including in a pharma company, Merck, ITC, which is into cigarettes and hotels, and Diageo, selling liquor. So he has been throughout selling virtues all his life. Currently, he is the CFO with the Indian hotels, which is Taj Group of Hotels. And we are eagerly looking forward to hear, Giri, from you about your take on the food and beverage industry. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Last but not the least, we have Ashmeet with us. Ashmeet, as many of you would know, is the founder of IC Organic, a company which has made its mission to make organic products available conveniently at your doorstep in every part of the wherever they can. It started this company a while ago, 8 years ago, while the movement was still in its nascent stage in the country. Ashit also comes with a very varied background. He has been an alumnus of Brown University and also overlapped with Matt in the University of British Columbia in Canada a few years ago. Thank you, Ashmi, for joining us today this afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you here, and really looking forward to see how you are looking at sustainable, food from your perspective and as to where we are headed in the coming times. Thanks for joining.
Looking forward to it too.
So the session today will be moderated by my co-chair of the CCBP program. Many of you here might already be knowing him, Anchal Jain, who is also the founding partner of Valmore Action Advisory, and of course is an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad a while ago. So over to you, Anchal, from here.
Thank you, Amit. A while ago is quite right. A very good afternoon to my fellow panelists and everyone who has joined us today. So before I come to the subject, I have a mandatory request to make. For all of you listening in, if you have any questions, please only post in the questions tab and not on the chat option in the Zoom. Because all the questions that are posted in the chat option will be ignored. Okay, so coming to the session, our deliberation for today is around this question. What is shaping the food and beverages industry? Simple, straightforward. Now, as we know, every global crisis, while it wreaks havoc on public health, morale, economy, businesses, it provokes reflection. And these reflections result in behavioral changes. It provokes financial prudence in the organizations, and it evolves new business orders. So what emerges from a crisis are actually leaner, fitter, stronger businesses that are able to service the new customer needs much better. So it is said that it takes 66 days to form a habit, and habits shape our behavior. This crisis obviously is much more than 66 days, and we are still counting, unfortunately. And it has resulted in many changes. It is true that there is mayhem in many industries, including F&B. It's true that many restaurants, bars, ventures in this sector, unfortunately, may shutter down. But that would mean that when we emerge from the lockdown, we may see fewer eating out options and a plethora of new opportunities. So as they say, never waste a crisis. And for everyone in the business today, small or large, there are still opportunities for everyone to pivot to come out stronger. Now, even though people are not going out to eat, they still want to have a restaurant experience. And they're certainly not eating any lesser. So at such a time, how is the business reacting? And what are we likely to see as the new normal? I'd like to kick off the discussion for today by asking the following question to all the panelists. Live, love, work, and play at home is changing our mindset. Cooking at home and taking pride in it, pride in cooking, is going to drive the future of the F&B industry. Would you agree to this premise? Rushina, may I begin with you, please? Rushina, you're on mute.
I realize that, sorry. Yes, so, I completely agree with this statement. I think the whole world was forced to stop and smell the roses, in a sense. We were forced from the cooking perspective. A food perspective is where I'm going to speak, because that's the area that I operate in. it has changed everything. We are still figuring out how everyone's trying to figure out what their new normal is going to be. But it's got some really exciting prospects also coming through.
Okay, Matt?
So for us, we've definitely seen a shift towards home consumption during this period. One driver, obviously, is the lack of access to cafes, and coffee is a habitual beverage. So if you can't visit your favorite cafe, you're likely going to increase your drinking at home. We're seeing more people interested in learning how to make coffee at home, and those that are already making coffee at home, learning new methods or upgrading their equipment. But I would be a bit cautious in saying that home consumption is going to be the future, because I do think that people had increasingly enjoyed spending time and money at F&B establishments outside prior to COVID. And as soon as they can do so safely, there's going to be a rush to resume those out-of-home experiences.
Well, I do hope so. That's what we are likely to see. But when that would be is still a question mark. Hopefully, the vaccine will precipitate that sooner than we imagine. Giri, how's your personal experience been as a consumer and otherwise from what you've seen with Taj?
No, that's true. I think I always find myself in panels where I'm the odd man out. I think, but definitely, I think food, I think, has taken center stage. I think for me personally, and we see that elsewhere as well. I think anecdotally, very clearly, we're locked up at home. I think what we did see in the last few months was that really healthier eating. We were not really eating or healthier eating for sure. Boredom with similar food, eating dal chawal, we want to try out something different, and we miss out on eating out. So therefore, I think with grown-up kids, I think we definitely saw trying out new stuff. And two things happened. Suddenly, our knowledge of food improved. Demystified, tiramisu was such complex. I never imagined I could make it at home, and now I can take the menu without looking at it and cook it actually. So I think demystification and knowledge certainly actually. Convenience, because no maids, we're kind of washing the dishes ourselves. So therefore, single dish meals, I think that suddenly becomes important. And every day, while food may take center stage, pride is one part of it that you refer to. But the point is also boredom, saying, gosh, aaj kya khana banaye? So I think that's also a very big question which comes at home. So ordering in certainly has increased. I think the point for me personally has been trusted sources. I think, and we see that in the business side as well, actually. And for me, I think when I look at this, I think there's really short-term versus long-term, because I think, we all sort of say that things will change permanently, but typically they don't. There are short-term changes and there are long-term changes for sure. Some things will definitely come back to normal, but I think we do hope that it settles down to a different level. And from a business perspective, I think clearly there are implications for the industry and for somebody like us in the Taj, where typically in a reasonable year, I think nearly 25% of our business comes from restaurant. I'm ignoring the banquets. I think it's a very big business, and therefore some of these trends are important for us actually. And so in terms of what kind of food, what kind of delivery models, channels, everything becomes important. So I think it's interesting. So I do think that we are in for some exciting changes. Some will be painful. Hopefully it will settle down at a level which is totally decent. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Giri. Ashmeet, how are you seeing the consumer mindset changing with more cooking at home, taking pride in it? Have you seen any changes, and what specifically are you seeing with your business then?
So specifically what we've seen, that the average bill per consumer has gone up quite a bit in this period. How much of this is long-term and short-term, I don't know. We'll find out. I don't know if this will continue beyond this phase of lockdown. And in terms of taking pride, I can say it seems like the whole world has become home chefs. Like everyone's cooking very elaborate things time to time at home. And people are definitely taking a lot of pride in cooking. Seeing that not just in our customer base, where we're seeing more and more people sharing what they're making using our ingredients with us on social media platforms, but also just in our sort of friends and family network, right? Like people who've never cooked before have suddenly actually become really good at it. Now, how much of this is going to last and be long term, I don't know. I think I tend to agree more with what Matt said, that once establishments start opening up again, people will rush towards them. I can talk from my personal experience that I think I've become quite good in this period to sort of be able to put together meals that I enjoy, which are also not very hard work. And going forward, the change I would want to make is I would like to eat out when I'm really wanting it. Eating things which are too hard to make at home or feeling lazy one day, but generally I feel more inspired to continue cooking the kind of food that I want to eat, which is healthier for me, better for me, and I'm controlling the ingredients that are going in. So that I can say what my personal thing is going to look like in the future. I can't broadly say at what the larger patterns would be like.
Okay. Well, it seems that with a lot of people cooking at home, and as Giri said, that he couldn't imagine that he could do a tiramisu at home. What we are finding also is that the lines between home cooked food and restaurant cooked food is blurring. And how that would impact the actual restaurant business when people are rushing back to eating out. It'll be very, very interesting to see. But certainly a lot of behaviors are here to stay. Matt, if I may ask you, during this time, clearly the cafe sales would have suffered. You told me they're down to 30%. But you're likely to have acquired a lot of new customers for coffee with home delivery. What are some of your new learnings, product services that you might have been able to bring to the customer, etc.?
Yeah, so I think in terms of the learnings, I think accessibility is a very underappreciated part of getting new customers. So for us, that means not only being available on the channels in which our potential customers already visit, but also having the ability to get them their orders and their products as quickly as possible. So unfortunately, sort of the standard website, the traditional e-commerce supply chain has become quite overwhelmed even after the lockdown. And this led to extremely long delivery times for some orders. And so if you're a new customer to us and it's taking 7 to 10 days for you to get your coffee, you probably aren't going to come back. And so that's really led us to look at listing on channels that have faster delivery times, partnering with vendors who are already doing home deliveries and bundling our coffee with that. Also looking at different hyper-local delivery options so that people can get their products as quickly as possible. I would say in terms of the new products and services, we focused a lot more on products that people can brew without requiring equipment, such as our Easy Pour sachets. And then also bundling equipment and coffee along with recipes together so that people can make coffee easily at home.
I'm curious about these Easy Pour sachets. Are they able to deliver the kind of quality that you'd be happy with serving in a cafe?
Yeah,
and
I mean, we wouldn't
customers reacting to it.
We wouldn't have released it if we weren't happy with the quality of the coffee. So I mean, I think in terms of the cup that you're able to get, it's on par with a pour over. You don't have the flexibility that you would in terms of getting different recipes and different flavors, but in terms of delivering a very high quality cup, it definitely fills that need.
Great. So in a way, you have demystified the coffee brewing and made it sort of more convenient and easier for customers who may be willing to experiment and try it new. You might look forward to a large set of these new customers that you acquire to come to the cafes when the normalcy is restored, Matt. So good luck with that.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yes.
No, I was going to say it's interesting because actually the cafes were initially established to get people in to try our product, learn about our brand, and then ultimately brew coffee at home. So the whole flow was to go from the cafe to be a home brewer. So now if we're able to get home brewers to come into the cafe, that's just an added kind of bonus for us.
Excellent. Giri, one of the things which is coming out very strongly from this crisis is trust. And the trustworthy brands are such as Taj, are realizing that it's more powerful to think of an omni-brand strategy rather than omni-channel. So just as the lines between the food service and the food retail are blurring, what opportunities are you seeing emerging as a result?
No, that's a great question. Actually, I think for us, yes, we enjoy a tremendous trust with our customers, and and that plays a very important part. And very clearly, Taj has been the center stage for everything actually. But now I think we are seeing opportunities beyond the Taj actually. I think, for instance, we want to actually minimize the use of Taj to preserve the pristineness of Taj actually. So I think that is one consideration which is definitely coming. Secondly, I think with the lockdown, when our restaurants are shut, we have very clearly thought about digital as a way of reaching our customers actually, and there we deliberately choose a brand called Cumin, which is not a Taj brand. But if you see there, I think our restaurants have become brands. So you go to the app, you sort of give your PIN code, and you will see that the Thai Pavilion and Golden Dragon and those come. So in a way, I think these brands are becoming more front to the customer in terms of being able to order food actually. A restaurant going online is what we call it actually. And with the food service and retail kind of blurring, we're also thinking of using our airline catering business, that SATS, we have created a brand called Anuka to sort of look at sandwiches, ready to eat stuff, which can be delivered. For instance, the Starbucks foods today comes from that SATS, and now we are thinking, why can't we do more of B2B2C, and also set up counters where.
Giri, may I ask you to please speak up a little bit?
Yeah. B2B2C and kind of set up stores, set up airport shops and things like that, where we can kind of reach out to customers using simple, convenient food. So that's another brand actually. So I think very, very clearly, I think we're trying to amplify the use of different brands in a way in reaching out to customers. As far as channels are concerned, I think digital channels are very important. I think one of the other things we've realized now is reaching out to customers directly is becoming important. And one thing some of my hotelier colleagues were telling me was that WhatsApp is becoming a very legitimate channel to reach out to customers. We have been calling up customers. How do you popularize Cumin? One is to put the app, but then also to call up customers on loyalty base and critical members and say, why don't you start trying it? So WhatsApp, direct communication with customers, all of these are becoming important actually. And I think it is still small numbers at this point of time, but we do think that these will become significant numbers, which will stay on, which means once the hotels open up also, when we do our sales through our restaurants and other channels, I think these will be independent sources of revenue. So I would say that, yes, we are kind of exploring multiple things.
Thank you. So what we are hearing is that even while the things are going difficult, the outlet sales are naturally lower, but it's not over. With product innovations, service innovations, and new ways to connect with the customers, actually a lot of brands, a lot of retailers are making themselves stronger. The other strong trend that was already visible and now accelerated actually during this lockdown is the need for healthy, natural, convenience food and beverages. How do you all see this playing out? Let me begin with Ashmeet.
So there's a few things, Anshul. One is in terms of the healthy food, right? Like for so long, a lot of products which were non-India grown products, which were imported into the country, they were not available in the market. So I think the demand for more locally produced foods that are nutritious and good for you, that we've seen spike up. And it's been a great opportunity to really talk about that. For instance, in the health food circuit, often there's a lot of talk about millets, right? And what we saw is millets is something we always have to have in our portfolio, but the demand was quite low. But it's those kinds of categories that are picking up. It's, there was this perception that olive oil was the best form of oil. And now when people have started cooking more at home and are being more conscious about the best ingredients and also being more curious, right? So things like, sesame oil, for example, and groundnut oil, coconut oil. These are more and more things that people are experimenting with, especially when they're also reading specialty recipes. Again, I will say that we don't know how much of this is going to last, but that's definitely a trend we've seen so far into the lockdown. And yeah, it's quite natural when you take charge of running your own household and it's not being run by someone else, you automatically become more conscious of what you're buying. So naturally, we've seen more people up their consumption of organic food. We've acquired way more customers in this period than we used to in the past. Now, there are other factors as well, right? Like we were one of the very few home deliveries companies that managed to stay up and running when the lockdown first began in March. And people who were even buying on Big Basket and Amazon, when those two shut down for some time, like we were one of the very few available. So that also contributed to increasing number of customers, but also because people want to buy better quality ingredients. And my hope is that a crisis like COVID is just going to show people the importance of being more conscious in how they consume, not just for their health, but also for the larger good and the world. So yeah, the hope is that this trend continues.
Okay, thank you, Ashmeet. I think that's very interesting. You talk about the customer becoming more knowledgeable and not just blindly following the set norms, and the opportunity which is emerging from the disruption in the global supply chains. Rushina, you would have a lot to say in this trend for healthy, natural, convenience foods and beverages.
Yes, I'm sorry, I got a bit flummoxed in the first question. I had lots to say there as well. Yes, so what I'm seeing across the board, and I've just started working on the next round of the Godrej Food Trends Report for 2021, but I'm also revisiting the Food Trends Report for 2020. And I'm seeing that several of the trends that we had predicted have actually been accelerated by this pandemic. Of course, the eating healthier one specifically. So I think one of the reasons is that immunity became a huge aspect of focus. And even as we're sort of still grappling to understand what COVID is all about, the thing that's coming through very, very clearly is that the only way to fight it, prevent it, is to boost your immunity. And immunity is not something that you're going to get, कि अभी हमने आज हल्दी दूध पी लिया तो हमको शक्तिमान का कवच मिल गया. It's not going to be like that. It's something that you have to work on. And that, I think, is triggering a lot of positive changes. Also, what's happened is that what you were saying about 66 days building a habit. So because we've been forced to be at home, because we've been forced to eat home cooking, because after a few weeks of making dalgona coffee and sourdough bread, we are realizing that there has to be a balance in how we deal with life. So we're also sort of looking for solutions that meet very different requirements. There's that slowdown, I think, none of us would have out of choice stopped everything for 2 months and sat at home. It has been forced on us, but it's really forced us to relook at everything. And of course, first of all, primarily, it is our own personal health and diet. But then you're also realizing a whole lot of other things, that the changes you make at your level are actually affecting a whole bunch of environmental level stuff, industry level stuff. And we are going to see some really exciting, I think, developments because of that.
Excellent. Matt, what do you have to add here?
Yeah, I mean, I think even prior to COVID, as you mentioned, we saw consumer preferences shifting from mass-produced or imported products towards high-quality, locally produced brands. And COVID is actually helping to accelerate that shift. I do think convenience will be an increasingly important part. Right now, people have the time at home to put in the effort towards preparation and all of these things. But that's not always going to be the case. And so I think that it'll be important for brands, even within this space, to have products that people can enjoy quickly and conveniently going forward.
Okay. I'd invite Giri as well.
Yeah, no, I think just building on what they said, I think some of the stuff which is, I guess, becoming important is the functional stuff. We look at beverages, which say protein, and then it says lactose intolerant. Kind of, I think that kind of a trend was anyway there pre-COVID actually. My sense is some of those will pick up. The second is clean labeling. If you take a raw pressery bottle, FSSAI requires you to give all the ingredients. And if you've got 15 ingredients from the highest to the lowest, the first two are usually water and sugar actually. And if you look at a raw pressery bottle, it says natural, sugar cane and nothing else. And that's it. I think clean labeling is a very important trend which will come up in beverages for sure actually. In fact, I think in our own Tata Consumer Products, we now have a logo which says for the better. It says for better is the tagline, which is better products, better nutrition, better living. So some of these things are beginning to resonate with customers actually. So I think these will be some of the other things I would add on to what the others have said.
So we're going to see a healthier India emerge from this lockdown, it seems, and the evidence so far seems to suggest that. Hopefully, the 60-day habit would have stuck. We talk about convenience, and with more people enjoying the cooking at home, with a whole lot of other things to do. Well, even now, you will have children at home that you're homeschooling and you're taking care of them, and multiple other things. You're working and doing the rest as well. There is a stronger need for convenient cooking in form of kitchen aids, easy to cook meal kits. Rushina, give us some examples of such developments and opportunities.
Also, just one little bit, the romance of cooking was there in the beginning, in the first couple of months when we had a lot of time. But when we realized that this is going to extend longer and life had to sort of strike some sort of balance, that's when the requirement for convenience came in. And, in terms of convenient food solutions, one of the biggest things I feel is, and I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but there is a very, very big rise in the foodpreneur, the home chef. So what is happening is we are outsourcing some of our requirements for daily cooking to other kitchens. We had that point of the WhatsApp becoming a very exciting space. So what we've got, and this is something we've seen and it's been accelerated, is that the home chef who's cooking from her own kitchen has really come into focus just now. Because if I need to get food, I don't want to get unhealthy options, I can get a very hygienic home-cooked meal from someone else's kitchen. Now, on one hand, this has given rise to a whole lot of solutions like, different regional cuisines that you can order, like Kashmiri to Kanyakumari, anything you can get from someone's home kitchen today. The other thing is that there are some very, very innovative people coming up with solutions. So in my neighborhood here, we've got a lady who started making ready-to-use fresh sauces. So, she has a makhani sauce, she's got a pasta sauce, she's got a coconut curry-based sauce. So the thing is, they're very much like the shelf-based sauces you would get. You can easily buy a makhani off the shelf, but you don't know what else has gone into the makhani that's on the shelf. This is a sauce that will last a week or so. All I have to do on a weekday is stir fry some protein or some veggies, add the sauce, and I have my meal ready in 15 minutes, freshly cooked, no added preservatives and nonsense like that. And it allows me to cook a decent meal. And it allows me to also function. And there's a lot of multitasking happening. Here in Bombay, a lot of us still don't have house help, but we've gone back to work. So lots of juggling happening. That's one solution I think that not enough businesses are looking at. On weekends, you will find all kinds of options for ordering in stuff because people are doing all kinds of innovative things, but not enough daily solutions. When I say daily solutions, I mean things like pre-marinated meats. So a company like Licious, for example, is offering pre-marinated meats, which again, you just need to open the packet and stir fry it. Or, they have ready-made cutlets, which you just need to fry, but they're natural. There's no preservatives or additives in them. Another thing that I found very exciting is because of, the lack of imported goods available, we're seeing a rise in local producers. Now, this is exciting, and I'm actually getting goosebumps because of the thought of it. We have got cheese makers across this country who are actually doing really well just now because you can't get any imported cheese. Similarly, I think people who drink good coffee, and Matt, you'll probably agree with this, are looking at local solutions for coffee. While we're focusing on what people are eating and drinking at home, there's a beautiful byplay that's happening where our local food producers are coming to the front. One last thing, and then I'll stop, is there are companies coming out with things like microgreens. There are farmers reaching out to housing societies, and today I can get amazing ingredients delivered to my doorstep. So I don't have to compromise on my health at all because it's all coming to me and it's making my life easier.
That's very encouraging. I hope the entrepreneurs out there are listening and making note of multiple opportunity and the doors that are opening. And it's not limited to this. Ashmeet, in this relation to health and environmentally sustainable organic, I have a question for you. Particularly on the organic part, the demand and the need for organic has always been felt, and a lot of people would want to indulge in it and partake in it. But it needs to be tempered with affordability, convenience, ease, and accessibility. How is I Say Organic addressing this?
The main thing actually I'd add to your list is trust and authenticity. And that's sort of our primary effort in our sourcing and also in our communication, is to really talk about the fact that we are completely a farm-to-table company. All the farmers who supply to us have been personally vetted by our company over and above certification, right? So certifications exist, but we have really exhaustive systems to do our own due diligence before we bring a farmer on, and then sort of communicating that transparently to our end consumer. And yeah, I mean, you're absolutely correct. Even almost a decade ago when I started the company, the hypothesis really was that if we are able to make organic food easily available at rates which are, they won't be the same rates as what you buy normal produce for, but at points which the consumer feels okay to pay that much premium, that's when the market will pick up. Because what we sensed was that there was latent demand, that people would like to have organic fruits and vegetables, but the way they were available were just not matching the lifestyle that people had. And I think just by having set up an established company, we've proved that. And now it's at a point where, as much as possible, sort of as much as it's possible and viable at the current volumes that we trade, to increase that convenience. Now, what's happened in the last 3 or 4 years is, there's this massive influx of funding that's come into the hyper-local grocery models, right? So there's so many companies with so much money they've raised who are just focusing on how can we make doorstep delivery more and more and more and more convenient. And it's hard for a company like ours, which is not a funded company, it's a bootstrap company. We can't just match what an Amazon with like so many resources behind them can deliver. But I think there is a line there in terms of that, as much as possible, let's make it as convenient as we can. And I think, that's where it is, and open to partnerships, right, with these companies. It's just that the nature of business we're in, sometimes these partnerships can be a little tricky to work out the details, but as much as possible, we try to. And this lockdown's actually been a good opportunity to try partnerships with companies like Zomato, for example, that started doing doorstep delivery of groceries, etc. And some have been more viable than others, but it's been a good time to experiment.
Okay, I'll come back to the next main trend that we've seen, and I think Rushina already, you spoke a little bit about it, is that there is a newfound curiosity and interest in lost or little appreciated Indian exploration, particularly the regional ingredients. what I would like to ask the panel is, how is the F&B industry absorbing this in the mainstream? Giri, let me begin with you.
Yeah, no, I think Taj has always been at the forefront in terms of some of the regional stuff we've been doing. You see our restaurants, whether it is Southern Spice in Chennai or Nukan Cafe in Bombay, Karavali in Bangalore, they've all kind of played to regional themes. So I think we've always been strong. And if you go to a place like Taj Rishikesh, I was amazed that the GM and the chef actually went around to the villages before the hotel opened and picked up the local cuisine from the mothers and the grandmothers. And what you get, the food there is kind of unique actually. So I think this regional thing is very much on actually. The other thing what we have noticed is that playing to the knowledge theme, Anshul, that you talked about, I think we also have a catering college in Aurangabad and where we have a culinary college. And what I understand is that the youngsters, the demand for the culinary college is so much, with so much knowledge, 18, 19-year-olds, with tremendous understanding of regional cuisines and really learn and share competitive. So I do think that there is, in our network, of course, we do take advantage of all the regional cuisine possibilities. Periodically, we do pop-ups whenever things open up, to sort of propagate regional cuisines beyond the regions as well. So very clearly, regional cuisines do play a part in all of this. And then, Rushina, you spoke about sauces actually. And I think sauces is something that we are trying to explore in a way in our flight kitchen actually. So one of the things we're exploring is that why should the hotels prepare their own sauces? They don't need to. So the flight kitchen is very efficiently set up to prepare sauces, which can be any kind of sauce that you want. And we have multiple flight kitchens and that can be supplied. And like you said, there's this lady in your neighborhood which can supply sauces. There is no reason why we can't start doing that because we are trying to move B2B to C from Sats actually with our own Anuka brand. I won't be surprised if tomorrow we have an Anuka brand of sauces that you can put on your meat or thing and cook actually. So I think this whole regional cuisine and concepts are very exciting and very intrinsic to what we do. And I think, it's there to stay. I know the beauty of regional cuisine is that it's a USP, there's a nicheness. I think it relates not just to taste, but also the senses. I think as a customer, engages customer minds. And, and I think it all adds to the brand that we represent. So for us, regional is very important.
Okay. Rushina, you already touched upon this. Would you like to add anything to this on how the mainstream F&B industry is actually exploring and integrating not just the regional cuisines, but the lost and the little appreciated opportunities, ingredients?
This is something that we've been seeing a steady rise in for the last, if you looked at the last 3 Godrej Food Trends report, we saw a huge shift towards the F&B industry was one of the first people to start, one of the first entities, I should say, to start looking at regional cuisines. And it started with things like speciality menus, which were, more region specific. But then it's not just region anymore. So we're not looking at only Kashmiri. We are then looking at Kashmiri Brahmin or Kashmiri Pandit and Kashmiri Muslim cuisine. We're looking at East Bengal and West Bengal. So we've gone from looking at regional to what I have termed micro cuisine, because there are so many different languages of food in India. And, just like we have different languages, dialects and languages, our cuisine also sort of branches into so many different things because of different parameters that are applied. The F&B industry has caught on to it. And, if you look at the how things were playing out in the last 2 years, lots of things were happening. Taj has been a leader in creating regional propositions. ITC has been working very hard in the space of documenting and putting regional foods forward. And the thing I've always found is this is a trickle-down thing. It's the 5 stars that make these things cool, and then it trickles down to standalone restaurants and local food options and things like that. So they are the ones who make it cool. I think what has compounded this currently is the fact that when we were in lockdown, we were limited to dal and rice, literally. That was what was available in the shops in the initial phase when you just could not move out of your house. And if you have to eat dal and rice every day, then you're going to look at different ways to cook it. Now, the brilliant thing about living in India is that we have millions of ways to cook dal. And so that's where we sort of started exploring things. What I'm seeing currently in the industry is the restaurants or the F&B establishments that are trying to tweak their offerings. They're trying to meet requirements of things that we can't get. So like a lot of restaurants have come up with wonderful options for street food. We've got Onam happening this weekend, and there is unbelievable stuff happening around the theme of Onam. There are people who are customizing boxes that are home delivered with everything you need for the Onam experience. This is also extending to beverages. So, people are figuring out, by the way, fermentation is a huge area of exploration. So it was started off by things like kombucha, which are more from the West or, global. But today we are looking at, there was just recently a 3-day workshop on fermentation in India, which I had the privilege to attend. And now suddenly the 150 participants that participated in it are making all kinds of fermented pickles and all sorts of things at home, and then getting into business to sell them. So we are exploring our own food, and we're creating propositions out of it.
That's
in fact, Anshul, if I can just build on a lighter note, one experience of mine. I used to work globally a few years ago, and I used to travel from Venezuela to Japan. And one of the things I used to explore was Indian food in different cities. Actually, a dal tadka in Venezuela was very different from what was in Tokyo actually, and a bagan bartha similarly actually. So that became a hobby to me. You see these waitresses and lehengas were all local, and then the male stewards were all kind of from Bangladesh or India. And it was an experience for me to try and explore this in a very different context. Sorry, digressing, but I thought it's interesting to see how it changes actually.
Yeah. Matt, how do you see it play out? The lost and little appreciated Indian ingredients explorations.
I mean, for our industry, I think over the past decade since we started, or close to a decade, there's been a huge change in terms of the appreciation for the different regions of coffee growing within the country. I think, when back when we started, there was this idea that all coffee came from outside of India, and especially good coffee in particular. Many people didn't even know that India grew coffee. Now, if you see with a lot of the coffee that's sold now, they'll have the region where it was grown, and in a lot of cases, the farm where it was produced. And so I think that's been a big change that we've seen and helped contribute towards. And now, in some cases, the farms are as well known as the coffee companies that are roasting. So I think it's really driven a lot of customer appreciation. One is that India has all of these different growing regions for coffee, and also transparency. Now it's almost a requirement that you have to say where the coffee was sourced from. And it's not just small boutique specialty coffee companies, but companies as large as Tata have recently come out with their own single estate line. So I think it's really encouraging and helps drive awareness and customer appreciation.
That's a very fair point as well. Now, what we are actually possibly seeing, before I come to you, Ashmeet, on the same subject, is that there is an opportunity to really own up, to recognize your own roots, and there is an opportunity in the F&B industry from where you are as a F&B entrepreneur. This is what I'm hearing, and this is very, very encouraging, rather than everyone trying to do the same thing. Ashmeet, how are you seeing this?
In our context, it's more about eating local, eating seasonal, and as a concept, that's something we've spoken about for quite a while, because when you look at organic food, it's not just eating food that is grown without chemicals; it's also eating stuff that is in sync with nature cycles, good for you, good for the environment. Most of what we've procured has always been from at least for the fresh food category, it's been 300, 400 kilometer radius of Delhi. And again, I think what this period or this lockdown has done is it's in a way forced people to also consume more locally and seasonally, right? So at one point, we'd have people who would get upset with us or say that I can't buy any more from you if you're not going to be able to give me 12-month availability of certain products. And it's quite challenging to make sure that we have cauliflower and broccoli and mushroom, things like that, which really are very difficult to grow in the summer and monsoon months, and have them available consistently for that 4 or 5 month period. But saying that to consumers seems like an excuse to them. So it's been tricky, right? That's been one of the more trickier things in our business. And in this period, it's been, people have been expecting that. People have suddenly had this consciousness that, hey, yeah, how can I expect broccoli in July when transportation is so difficult right now? So yeah, that's been sort of our experience. As I'm saying, we have always been all local regional. We actually do not sell any imported products, even from our store, which is multi-brand. And we've just seen more acceptance of it. And as I shared before, we've seen certain food products, when people are experimenting more and taking charge of their kitchens, we've seen demand for more indigenous foods grow as well.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the things that I have seen very, very strongly is this whole understanding our own cuisine. And if you see Instagram, the consumption of content today around learning how to cook regional foods, experimenting with local seasonal ingredients. It's amazing how that is playing out on Instagram. People are cooking their own food, sharing about it. We've got lives happening every day. I personally do a series called Spice Chronicles with RMG, in which I'm exploring how spices are used from different regions of India. There are people talking about, history on a plate. There are people talking about the history of ingredients. So there's a lot, and all of this is being consumed in a very organic manner by people. There's a huge exchange of information happening. So it's all sort of feeding into what we are going to be looking for in terms of solutions from the industry as we go forward. We're not going to be very happy to have generic red curry, white curry kind of food anymore.
So what we are actually, Rishina, you preempted my next question to you. You already answered it, which is great. I can save time. But in fact, what is interesting is that there is a lot happening in the consumer space, which the F&B entrepreneurs need to listen and tune in, and how to convert those into opportunities for businesses. Because yes, as we've seen, people have a little bit more time today, so they're experimenting it themselves. But when we come out into normalcy, suddenly is it all going to be wish away, or there will be a need for that somebody else can come in and fulfill? As Giri said, today it's your neighbor doing something. How can a larger business integrate this, or for new entrepreneurs to sort of think of it and scale up, including your neighbor, on how to make this into a more sustainable, scalable business. I think there are very, very interesting opportunities in this space that we are hearing. Now, the other thing which is quite related to this actually is that before COVID struck us, we were already seeing a lot of emergence of these exciting ventures: coffee, spices, organic food, regional cuisines, etc., which today, of course, by heightened consumer interest, but also the breakdown in global supply chains, this renaissance is waiting to explode. Now, my question to the panel is the F&B industry recognizing the markets in Middle India with all these opportunities, the middle income and the tier town residents? And how has COVID sort of impacted that? Matt, can I begin with you?
Sure. So, I mean, for our industry and our position within the industry, we had felt that, especially when we started, that you would have to have been exposed to premium coffee, whether through traveling abroad or working abroad. And typically those customers would have been in one of the top 3 metros. And so when we started, the vast majority of our sales were to Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore. They were our 3 biggest markets and contribute around 75% of our business. Now, over time, as the coffee culture has expanded and also these other cities have grown and developed, we've steadily seen the concentration of sales in these markets decreasing. And so now there's consumers for good quality coffee all across the country. I don't think COVID has really had any impact one way or the other on that. It's been more driven by sort of a spread of coffee culture and a greater awareness of drinking coffee and better quality coffee rather than anything specific to COVID for us.
Okay, Ashmeet, how do you see this going into the middle India market, the middle income and the tier town markets?
So I don't have direct experience with that because As Organic largely serves Delhi. We are in the process of making our products available through more and more distribution channels and going pan-India. And we have seen incoming requests coming from organic stores in small towns and cities. The last one, I believe, was a store in Mathura that was inquiring to stock our products. Now, through sort of my travels for Ice Organic, which have taken me, of course, visiting farms all over the country and into small towns as well. I visited organic stores that exist there. And I was surprised, and this is a bit dated now. This was maybe 4 or 5 years ago when I did an extensive sort of trip. I was surprised that organic stores in these smaller tier 2 towns and cities were actually tier 2, tier 3 even. They were doing quite decently well. So I went, for example, to meet one of the guys who ran that store, and it was a weekday afternoon. And this was 5 years ago or something. And I was quite surprised that on like a Wednesday, Thursday, middle of day, I was seeing one person come in every 10 or 15 minutes into the store, and buying quite a good chunk of groceries for their kitchen. And when I thought about it, I remembered that, so Ice Organic, the inception happened at the farm. I'd taken some land on lease from a friend in Eastern UP, and I started experimenting with farming. So whatever we used to grow, it was a small, you can't even call it a city or a town. It was a small place in Eastern UP. And even there, there were 10 or 20 families that got sort of regulars with like whatever vegetable we were growing on the farm. They would come and buy it at a predetermined rate. And what I really think is that people who live in smaller towns and cities are actually more connected to farming. Often they have farming in their own families, right? And they're closer to the problem. So they know how chemical intensive it is. And this might be more some latent demand. But I think people are looking for options. And often, even our farmers, for example, who grow wheat in Haryana, they have dedicated local families who buy directly from them. Now, how they discover each other, I don't know. But there's a lot of direct farm to consumer happening in these smaller towns and cities. As companies, we end up focusing on the metros, and I'm not sure what a business model would be that, makes it economically viable for a company to set up and serve these small towns. But perhaps it's opportunities for local entrepreneurs more than us or companies like us to expand into these markets. You're on mute, Anshul.
Giri, how do you see the renaissance in the middle India and tier towns with interest, and how is the F&B industry sort of particularly Taj, let's say, integrating those opportunities in smaller towns?
No, I think as we have continued our expansion into the our network, I think we have seen that we are making a lot more inroads into the smaller towns in terms of setting up hotels. Actually, very clearly.
Can you come closer, please?
Yeah, very clearly in all these hotels, there is always a lot of local stuff that we do. And typically, if I look at a configuration of hotels in these smaller towns, unless it's a Taj, if it's a Vivanta as an example, you will have a coffee shop, you'll have one specialty restaurant, and you'll have a bar. I mean, that's the typical configuration. If it's a Taj, you may have maybe one more specialty restaurant, actually. I mean, that's the way it works. So my sense is that I think the coffee shop becomes, I guess, the place for a lot of experimentation in terms of all-day dining, is what I would say. The specialty restaurant can be local. Like if you go to Pune, for instance, we have a Maharashtrian special local restaurant. We also have a Chinese, because in some of the smaller towns, some of the aspirational stuff is to eat Chinese or Thai. Whereas I think you do have a Maharashtrian restaurant in a place like Pune. But where you don't have two, I would say the coffee shop all-day diner becomes definitely a place to experiment. And a lot of it is local. So we do sort of do a lot in these places, because F&B in most of these hotels will still constitute 25-30% of the top line. So very significant in terms of top lines, actually. So part of it will be aspirational in terms of what is not available in the region, and part of it will be local in terms of what we have. So that is what I would say. Yeah.
Okay, Rushina, what are you seeing in the market, and how do you see the F&B industry reacting or can react? Rushina, you're on mute.
Realize that. Sorry. Apologies for that. Last year when I worked on Godrej Food Trends Report 2020, I actually traveled to several cities. So I wanted an on-ground feel of things. So I traveled to Delhi, Bangalore, Bombay to Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, Kolkata. Now, one of the things I realized is that there is no one size fits all in India. You have to look at demographics of different regions, and consumer patterns change in different regions based on various different things. So I'll use one particular parameter that just to explain what I'm saying. So we were talking about this rise of the home chef and the rise of pop-up restaurants and home delivery services. So one very, very exciting aspect last year that we saw, which is what's being accelerated this year, is one restaurant started offering pop-up menus. So, for a limited period, they offered a regional menu. And you saw a lot of home chefs doing pop-up sit-down meals or dinner experiences or stuff like that. And this was happening very, very on a large scale level in cities like Bombay, in cities like Bangalore. Delhi, on the other hand, you didn't have any of that happening. There was no excitement around eating home cooking from someone else's kitchen. And what I realized was that main Delhi actually still is, large families living together. There is somebody controlling how food is cooked. It's still home cooked food. A lot of us who live in cities like Bombay and Bangalore are smaller families. Like even Delhi to Gurgaon, if you compare, Gurgaon has a lot more of this pop-up and regional exploration happening than Delhi itself. But again, Kolkata, there was not too much of this happening, because Kolkata again is more grounded. So the same thing that Ashmit was saying of the connect, in smaller places, the connect to where food is coming from is stronger. The connect to your home kitchen is stronger. The person who's actually doing the cooking in your kitchen perhaps has more time. And in many of the metros, I think we have less time. So we're looking for solutions outside the house. And that's where I feel one will have to see how things will play out. So for example, compared to last year when I visited Kolkata and this year after the pandemic, there's been like a crazy amount of pop-up kitchens opening up all across Kolkata, because people have started, like food bloggers and people in the food business have opened up their kitchens and they're selling food. Everything from Bengali to Sri Lankan to, you name it, is coming out of home kitchens. So for the moment, that's what we see. And, I feel that this will continue for another year and a half at least, by which time there'll be other things also that will factor in.
Okay. Thank you, Rishina. Matt, I have a question for you in this regard. With the remote working, many metro executives are migrating back to their hometowns. Um, do you think this would present a large enough opportunity for someone like a Blue Tokai to find economic viability, enough catchment for new age cafes in such markets?
For us in our organizational structure, we found that we need to be able to open up at least 4 locations in a given metro for it to be viable. So I think looking at the market, I see that opportunity in the top 8 to 10 cities in the country right now. I don't see it going beyond that for the foreseeable, for the next few years. However, I do think there is tremendous opportunity for individual operators in these cities, and we do supply coffee wholesale to cafes all around the country. So there are places like Surat, Nagpur, Indore, just to name a few, Chandigarh, where there's cafes that we supply to that are doing tremendous business. And I think that if you're an entrepreneur from one of these cities, there's a lot of opportunity there.
That makes absolute sense. We are almost we are at 5:06. I may want to wrap up a little bit now and ask everyone to take a minute or two to just talk about the content-led marketing. What is happening with the ways to go to the consumer, the go-to-market, the new sales channels, the new communication channels, and the whole opportunity for content-led communication, which is now seeing discovery for brands and products in this new era, either now or as the new normalcy is sort of established. How are you personally seeing this trend unfold? Let me begin with Giri.
Yeah, so I think we've always had, I suppose, a fair amount of content-led marketing because of the kind of restaurants and the food we give. So I guess now it's getting probably more amplified. We are the other thing which is also emerging beyond the content itself is using our chefs in terms of talking about cuisines, actually healthy food, and so we do see very regularly on Instagram and Facebook, you will see that our chefs talk about some particular aspect of what they do actually, and these become influencers as far as our customers are concerned actually. So I think the content-led, influencer-led marketing will be very important actually, very very clearly for us. We've always been doing it, and we will continue to do that. And as we go online through Cumin and things like that, I expect that the whole Cumin app will evolve into talking much more about content. Today, if you go to the Cumin app, it will talk about different restaurants. But I think over a period of time, these will also morph and develop into talking more about what kind of food we're doing on the online actually. So content-led marketing very clearly. Content-led marketing will definitely be something that will continue to play an important role for us.
Rishina?
Well, as somebody who's been in the space of social media for a very long time, as a small brand, I've used social media to grow myself. I've also worked with a lot of companies and advise on content-led marketing for social media. I feel that it is the place to be. I think Instagram, in my opinion, is where everyone is just now. In terms of how they're marketing. There's also been a surge recently in Facebook as well. Like we're seeing a lot more attention being paid to content going on Facebook. Also, how these platforms are themselves evolving to meet the requirements. Instagram, for example, with Insta Live and Reels. So I think, the small business, which is going to be coming to the fore just now with the restaurant industry still figuring out where, how to kind of move forward. The small business with limited budgets, the best place to be is to have a strong story and to be selling it through your Instagram and your social media channels. But the story counts. The content, your story needs to be strong and it needs to stand out, because it's not just you who's telling your story, every other person is as well. So building that loyal group of people who resonate with your story is where you're going to be able to make a difference.
And with this heightened interest in lost or little known regional gems, the narratives also become very exciting when you're talking about the content.
Extremely exciting. And that's also because, it's something that reflects in what Giri was also saying with their chefs coming out. Now, Taj has some of the most brilliant chefs, but their voices until now were very brand driven. But now and it's not just Taj chefs, you've got chefs across the board coming out, and food, there are a million in this country, there are a million subject matter experts. As many regional cuisines as we have, that many subject matter experts we have. It's not something one person can be an expert on. And it's those million voices today that are getting a platform in places like Instagram. It doesn't take much, right? I'll give you one small teeny success story. There was a lady who reached out to me for my Spice Chronicles. Her name is Nitika. She runs Pahadi Patal. It's a small home kitchen out of Noida in Delhi. She does Himachali food. She reached out to me and she said, I want to do, I would love to come on your live. And I was most excited because I hadn't ever explored Himachali food. So she came on my live. In the last 2-3 months after she's come on my live, in the last 2 months, she's grown in the people that have focused on her. She's done more lives. She's doing specific dishes. Like she did something called the Baturu, which is a bread that's made in Himachal, yeast-based bread made in Himachal using traditional I won't geek out on you, sorry. But what I'm trying to say is that, even with something as simple as a bread, we have so much in India. And she talked about it on her Instagram. And the next weekend, she had so many orders. She did a pop-up just around the Bhaturu. That's the kind of thing that we see.
Ashmeet, what are you finding new in the content-led marketing or new ways? Very simple, including WhatsApp.
Yeah, so content-led marketing-wise, that what I'm seeing on Instagram by a lot of brands, including us, is people resonating a lot with value-based content. And I think people are looking for making more conscious choices and buying from companies that are also ethical and have values resonating with people, right? Even in terms of how do you treat your employees? Are you a fair workplace, etc.? And I'm seeing that sort of content doing better and better. In terms of channels, yeah, you have to be on every channel and every customer is different, right? So someone is very active on WhatsApp and actually wants to hear about our latest product offerings on WhatsApp, and someone doesn't want to be disturbed on WhatsApp or even a phone call. They only want our newsletter. Someone wants nothing and just wants to go on our website on their own. So, this is not marketing, but in this period, we've had to evolve our policies a lot, right? Like literally in the first month or so of the lockdown, like every week, there was some new policy we had to enforce, and just making sure that each customer gets it. Like we had to be very thorough because we were like, well, these are important changes everyone needs to know. So let's blast it everywhere just to make sure we get eyeballs. Because sometimes our operation teams would be like, this customer wasn't aware, so perhaps the marketing team hasn't done a good job. Like, well, we've put it on social media. It doesn't mean that everyone's reading Instagram. So after doing everything, we also send a note with the delivery because we're like, if they haven't seen anything else, at least they'll see this. Because in the end, lockdown or no lockdown, attention spans are limited, right? So
absolutely right. Matt, last word for you.
Yeah, I would just, I think I really resonate with what Ashmeet was saying, is that I think we used to be focused on just Instagram and on the cafes to provide an experience. And now we're seeing that you really have to be accessible to customers across all these different channels. So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, people are just coming in on every kind of digital platform. In terms of the content itself, we found that things that can create some sort of engagement with customers are having the biggest impact for us. So when we do things like a recipe where we use our coffee to create something, maybe a baked good, then that ends up creating a lot of engagement. Even though it's not directly related to coffee, it's something that people can use our product to do something else. We spent a lot of time doing live classes, and so we've gotten a lot of good customer interaction. So for us, it's about figuring out ways to translate a physical experience into online platforms is both a challenge and an opportunity going forward.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Maybe I can ask Anaka if she has any questions for us and open the floor to the audience.
Hello. I do have some questions from our audience. The first one, I think maybe Matt and Giri and anybody can weigh in. Quite a few people in our audience have asked about dark kitchens or cloud kitchens, and they were wondering if you could say a few words about where you see that going, and specifically if you think that the pandemic has created room for aggregators to provide this service.
Giri, you want to take this one?
Yeah. No, I think absolutely. No, I think the pandemic has clearly created opportunities for aggregators. Aggregators have become much more active now, and frankly, they're enabling the whole food delivery in multiple ways. Like if you go to Swiggy, you can get local stuff delivered to you in maybe half an hour actually. So I think the aggregators are playing a very big role, and I think the whole concept of cloud kitchen was anyway there before the pandemic. If you look at companies like Box 8 and places like that, which had set up central kitchens and cloud kitchens everywhere, where you could order a meal and it gets delivered to you. I think now that will go up actually. The whole space of cloud kitchen and central kitchen is going to go up very significantly. We will do it. I mean, we are planning to do it along in our SATS venture, where we do intend to sort of participate in the QSR space through a B2B2C format, which will essentially follow the cloud kitchen, central kitchen kind of models actually. So I think there's enough to do in terms of developing that.
So fewer flights, but more other several other opportunities for the SATs to play a role.
Yeah,
as a cloud kitchen. That's what I hear you saying, and that is interesting because unlike what a cloud kitchen can seem like, SATs would probably have very interesting protocols and hygiene and all of that to be servicing the airlines. Anyone else wants to take this question?
One thing I'll add is I think what the restaurant industries realized in this pandemic, when you couldn't operate at all, is real estate pricing or rentals have been a massive drain and a big problem. A lot of restaurants have had to close down because of that. And a cloud kitchen allows you to operate one or even multiple brands out of a central space. So your overheads are a lot less. So I think again, we saw cloud kitchens as being a big trend, but slow in the next few years, growing slowly in the next few years. But I think it's been accelerated because of these challenges that we faced during the pandemic.
Okay. Anaka, anything else?
Yes. Rushina and Ashmeet, perhaps, how do you see opportunities for veganism and plant-based meats in India? And also a couple of people have asked about hydroponic agriculture.
Should I start, Ashmeet, or would you like to?
Yeah, please.
So hydroponics, I think, is really taking off. I've personally connected with at least 3 businesses in the last few weeks. So one of the farms that's delivering to us is growing hydroponic stuff. And that's not the only one. There's across the board. I mean, I'm seeing it in Dehradun as well, because I have a family member that's growing hydroponic stuff. So definitely big trend. As far as the plant-based meats is concerned, I'm going to be slightly controversial here, because in India, we've traditionally eaten plant-based protein. That's what dal is. And gattas and all of those besan-based things are all basically plant-based meat. That's what the premise of plant-based meat is built on. I think that if anyone is getting into that zone, two things. One is I would question what's going into something like a plant-based meat, because it's not just plant-based protein. There are other things as well. The other is, why are we reinventing the wheel? We have our very, very rich plant-based protein culture. We just need to rediscover it.
Okay. Ashmi, do you have anything to add?
That as well. So
Especially on the vegan part.
first, yeah, I mean, so many people have gotten into hydroponics, and I think hydroponic is definitely, it seems like, going to have a place in how we produce food in the future. I don't think traditional farming is going anywhere, but I think hydroponics is going to be part of the new reality. Plant-based, well, I am vegan myself, so obviously that's an industry I am very excited about. So there are certain plant-based and vegan-friendly products that I definitely want to see in the market, and there is, I think more people are turning towards veganism in India as well. I think the trend is not as fast in India as it is in other countries, and I think it comes from, like, a lot of people genuinely believe that because cow milk is such a big part of our diet and Ayurveda talks about it so much, people are just very resistant to the idea of veganism. But I think with more sustainability consciousness, environmental consciousness, ethical considerations, people are considering veganism, and with also growing evidence of plant-based diets preventing or sometimes even reversing some lifestyle-based diseases. Now, as far as plant-based meats are concerned, that is something that's never personally sat too well with me. If it's promoted as something which is a regular part of your diet, because in the end, those are heavily processed products. So a big part of being a vegan is for health reasons. And now if you're going to have a plant-based hamburger every day, you're not doing yourself any favor. I see the reason for these products, which is that people who've led primarily, say, meat-based diets, and they're switching to veganism for ethical reasons or environmental reasons or health reasons, you do have cravings and you do want to be able to have stuff which are used to time. So I think there's definitely a place for that. Now, again, there will be a place for plant-based meats in India as well. But I think those products perhaps would have to be Indianized in a way so that Indians who have grown up eating meat and are trying to transition away from it, can probably have one cheat day when they can get that same taste without actually eating meat. I could be wrong about this. I'm just speculating really, but if plant-based, actual sort of plant-based hamburger patties, etc., take off in India, I would probably imagine it to be a fad and not a long-term thing, because, as I said, in the end, these things aren't healthy. They're not good for you. And I would hate to see that as the trend that takes off in the vegan food space.
Got it. Thank you. What opportunities do you think there are for tech applications, new apps, that is, outside of the delivery services in the food and beverage industry? I would love to hear from any or all of you on this.
I think give a shot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think there's tremendous opportunities to layer on technology in F&B. So I think one is apps that enable brands to work with consumers. So helping brands set up their own apps for loyalty or customer engagement is an opportunity. For us, we look at technology in terms of our supply chain. So how can we source better coffee? How can we roast better coffee? How can we brew better coffee? What are the technology solutions that we can layer on top of that? And I think that would be applicable towards any restaurant in the F&B industry. They would want anything that's going to help them improve their quality and their consistency. So I think there's a lot of solutions that can be done there.
One of the things we saw last year is a very personalized diet. Personalized optimized diets is going to be something that people are looking at, and there are already, I think, companies working on apps which help you figure out what you need to eat based on your metabolism, how much you exercise. um, there are a lot of apps that exist on a global level that also give you information on nutrition, but we don't have enough that give you detailed information on nutrition from the Indian food context. So again, there's a lot of space there, because a lot of our indigenous ingredients, are healthy, are so-called superfoods, but we don't have enough information about it. And so I think apps that give you that kind of information that is localized and personalized, allowing you to tweak diets, allowing you to create recipes that work for you, I think are things that would be interesting.
Okay, thank you, Anika. Amit, do we have time for another question, or should we make a wrap?
You're on mute, Amit.
Okay, well, I think we're going to call it a wrap for now. Thank you, Matt, Giri, Ashmeet, Rushina, for joining us today. It's really heartening to hear about a bunch of new openings in the F&B sector for entrepreneurs to seize as we speak. If I were to summarize, what is likely to emerge from the lockdown is a more knowledgeable consumer who's happy to cook at home, curious about regional cuisines, increasingly looking for convenience, and definitely more. This would mean several new customer entry points opening up. And we should really hope to witness a realignment of the food value chain led by innovations in product, service, and customer engagement. We should definitely see an explosion in ready-to-eat and ready-to-cook meal kits. The disrupted global supply chains and the likely decline in the number of restaurants and bars further opens up doors for entrepreneurs in the sector. And finally, I would just say this: listen and watch your customers carefully. You'll have all the clues you want to react or proact today. With this, may I invite Amit to please close this session. Thank you very much.
Anshul. Thank you for a very interesting discussion. And thank you all the panelists, Rushina, Matt, Giri, Ashmeet, for giving us some great insights. And more importantly, a lot more ideas to think upon. Hopefully, we will give it some more thought. And it was a pleasure to have you on the panel. Look forward to seeing you on the campus of IIM in Ahmedabad sometime. Thank you so much for taking time out on this afternoon. Thank you also, Anika, for handling these questions. And to all the listeners, thanks a lot for tuning in. We have now kind of got a rhythm. We will see you next month, the last Friday of September, which is September 25th. And the next topic for our live deliberation series is on media and entertainment industry, where we already have some very good panelists already confirmed, including Sandeep Bhargava, who's a veteran in the film production business with more than 170 hits under his belt. And we have the Rashmi Dhanwani, founder of Artex, very interesting entrepreneur working on the interface of arts and access. And we have Arjun Gupta, who's confirmed to be on the panel next month, who's the founder of Piano Man. Those of you who are into jazz would know he is a happening live jazz bar and restaurant in Delhi. So hope to see some of you tune in next month, Friday, September 25th. And thanks once again for listening. Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.